Okay, here's our video on powers of 10, part 2, multiplication. So let's just go over the exponents. Remember, powers are exponents, and we're using powers of 10. That means the base is 10. So any number to the 0 power, who remembers? Any number to the 0 power is 1. Any number to the 0 power is 1. The 0 is telling you that you should have no zeros. No zeros. 10 to the power of 1, sometimes it's written without a 1, sometimes the 1's invisible. So it's saying you should have 1 0, and we do, 1 0. And 10 to the power of 2, we should have 2 zeros. 10 to the power of 9, how many zeros should we have? The exponent tells you, right? 9 zeros. You have the 1 and 9 zeros. Okay, let's see that, make that fit there. So we have 1 billion, 9 zeros. And what about this one? How many zeros should we have with 10 to the 200th power? 200 zeros. So you have a 1 and then 200 zeros, right? We'll go right off the page with that. So that's how we do powers of 10, with 10 as the base. Okay, so remember now, we're only using 10. So if I said 9 to the 3rd power, we're not adding 3 zeros to 9. We're not saying that. No, that's not the answer. 9 to the 3rd power is 9 times 9 times 9. It's repeated multiplication. So here's a key word here, repeated multiplication. So again, if I did, let's say, 7 to the 4th power, I'm saying 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. 7 4 times. This is an exponential form, if you remember, and this is repeated multiplication. So if I gave you this, 5 to the 5th power, and I said, write this in repeated multiplication, what would you do? Well, 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. Repeated multiplication. We should have 5 5s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 5s. One common mistake that students make, 2 to the 3rd power. The common mistake is saying that this is 6. It's not 3 times 2. It's 2 times 2 times 2, which equals 8. So remember, it's not 2 times 3. It's 2 by its times itself 3 times. Now, multiplying with powers of 10. So here's a question here. We have 23 times 10. So all you have to do, again, the 10 tells you that you should have a 0 in it. So this would be 230. Okay, if it was 23 times 100, well, how many zeros should we have? 2. So it'll be 23 with 2 zeros. What about this one? What if I had 23 times 1,000? How many zeros should I have? 3 zeros. It's right here. 1, 2, 3. So it'll be 23 with 3 zeros. 23,000. Okay. Let's look at this. So we have 342 times 10. So when you have a 10, it's telling you you should have another 0 with this 342. So it's 3, 4, 2, and another 0. Right, bring that over. So how many zeros should we have here? We have 3, 4, 2, and 2 more zeros. The comma's there. 34,200. And how many zeros here? 3. Right? We'll write it here. So we have, write the number 342 and just add 3 zeros. So that's how we can multiply with powers of 10. Okay, let's try this one. How would you do that? How many zeros should you add to the number? 4. Right? So 3, 4, 2, and then add 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3,420,000. Now we can also do this with exponents. So here's 342 times 10. And when we use 10, remember there's always a 1 that's invisible. Sometimes you can use a 1 or sometimes it's just 10. So it's saying that you should have 1 0. So it will be 3, 4, 2, and a 0. That's what it's saying. So how can you do this one now? What if I gave you 342 times 10,000? How would you write that in exponential form? Remember we did exponential form? You have an exponent. So we're going to have a 10, but what exponent should I use for this and this to be the same thing? We'll count the zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the exponent should be 4. So this and this are equal. It's the same thing. You can write it in standard form, remember standard form, or in exponential form. So if we wanted to show this again, 324 times 10 to the 4th power. How many zeros? 4. Right? And the same up here. It's saying 4 zeros, so they're the same thing. Now sometimes you get a decimal. 12.5 times 10 to the 3rd power. Now, when you see a decimal, the exponent is telling you to move the decimal to the right. It's telling you to move this decimal the amount that the exponent tells you. So the exponent is telling you everything. It says move that decimal 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So this is what let's write it down here. 1, 2, 3. So the decimal ends up here. Decimal's not there anymore. It's here. And you make these waves, like the ocean, right? You made these waves. And the waves should not be empty. So right now we have a 5 in one wave, and in these waves we should put the zeros. Anytime you have an empty wave, put the zeros. So you get 12,500. Now let me show you something now. If you had a normal number like 5, not a decimal, there's always a decimal there. So 5 is actually 5.0. Now you can write it as 5, but it's also 5.0. So if you had 5 times 10 to the 3rd power, well, the decimal's here. It's in front of it. Remember? 5 could be 5.0. So it's saying move this number 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And that's where the decimal ends up. So let's write it over here. So it'll be 5 with 1, 2, 3 waves. And we want to add 3 circles. 3 zeros, not circles. 3 zeros into the waves. We get 5,000. Okay? So remember with decimals, you move the decimal what the exponent tells you to move it. So try this on your own. How would you put this in standard form? Remember, this is in exponential form. It's also what we call scientific notation, which you'll learn in another grade. Well, it's almost scientific notation, but right now we're just saying multiplying with powers of 10. And you notice we don't have the dot, we're using the x. We use the x when we're multiplying a power of 10. But when we're using multiplication like 3 times 5, I'll put that dot there. And there's a reason why I'm not going to use the x, because the x is also a variable, which we'll go over in another grade. So anyway, here we have 132.9 times 10 to the 7th power. How many times should I move that decimal? Right here, it tells you. 7 times. So let's write it. 132.9. We'll move it 7 times. 1. We already moved it once. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make sure we get it all in there. So what do we fill these waves with? Remember, the decimal's there now. It's not there. We fill it with zeros. That's a big number. Right? So we have 1, 3, 2, 9. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. And every 3 is a period. Here's our number. So fill it in there. Okay, so again, the decimal tells you to move the exponent tells you to move the decimal that many times. Okay, let's try this one. Try to do this one on your own. You should pause the tape. Okay, let's get another marker here. The blue is running out. So, again, the exponent tells you to move the decimal that many times. How many times? 3. 1, 2, 3. All the waves are full. So, your answer, you can write 089, but actually 089 is just 89. Right? We don't have to put a 0, like when 0.5 is actually 5, right? We don't have to say 0.5. So again, we move this decimal, and it's 89. And remember, 89 is also 89.0. So remember that. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this only works when the base is 10. Don't do this when you have another number that's not 10. This is not saying move this 3 times. No, don't do that. Only when you see 10. So if you had 56 times 10 to the third power, remember the decimal's hidden. It's right here because it's actually 56.0. How many times should I move the decimal? 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 waves and one's filled. Fill the rest. 56,000. So in multiplication, you move the decimal what the exponent tells you to move. Let's do one more, see if we understand. So if I had 0.006, it's a small decimal, 0.006, and let's say it was times 10 to the 6th power, how would you do that? Okay, how many times should you move this decimal? There's your answer, 6 times. See how the exponent helps us? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we took the decimal here, and it's right there. So now we have 006, and these waves must be filled. We'll fill them with zeros. Now, these 2 zeros on the end, we don't need them anymore. So it's just 6,000. Or 6,000.0. Okay, so that's exponents with multiplication. In our next video, we'll do division. Great job.